Our motto here at the Daniel Davis Deep Dive is we are unintimidated and uncompromised to bring you the truth that you need to make sense of the world around you. When President Trump has done some things that an objective analysis shows are not good or would lead to something bad, we have not hesitated to tell you that. And we pointed it out. Just like we did with President Biden during his time in office. But when he does something good and when he says something very positive, then we want to promote that and laud that as well, because that's something you need to know. And I'll tell you, the words that he said today in Saudi Arabia were maybe the best that I have ever heard him say. Now, I will caveat this by saying, as I do a lot of times, words are important. They matter, but deeds matter more. And if you have good words, but the deeds don't follow on, then the words lose all their value. But if you have good words and then they're followed on with deeds as well, then you got a really good combination. And that is what we absolutely hope that Trump does here, that he follows these good words up today with commensurate actions. And we could see a sea change, positive for the United States, for our reputation around the world. I mean, I have to admit, I was very, very surprised when I heard the comments that he made today. I kind of expected it to be kind of some boilerplate stuff and just kind of some stuff that Trump does a lot, where he's just kind of rambling about this or that and making some comments here and there. But this was really, really good. And there are a couple of things that I want to point out to you that he said this afternoon, just hours ago. One is that he showed respect and honor for the people of the region. And instead of trite or fake optimism or compliments that don't mean anything, or just kind of almost being condescending and trying to say something good, maybe you can tell when people say stuff they don't really mean. It didn't have any of that feel to it at all. And then the second thing is he exposed some things that the United States has done in the past that have been disastrous, that no American president has wanted to touch. They've just kind of been ignoring a lot of that stuff and just kind of pretending that bad things hadn't happened. Trump did both of those things today, and I think that it could be a really, really positive change as long as his actions follow up with this as well. Let's first of all start off with the positive side that he said there about what about the region, because he says some things here that I think are long overdue. They've been true for a long, long time, but too many people in the United States, and I think that a lot of this goes back to, frankly, the 9/11, because we see the Middle East as the place of the wars, of terrorism, and all this kind of stuff, and that has kind of clouded our view of the entire region. Trump went to lengths today to say something different.
In other cities throughout the peninsula, places like Dubai and Abu Dhabi, Doha, Muscat, the transformations have been unbelievably remarkable. Before our eyes, a new generation of leaders is transcending the ancient conflicts of tired divisions of the past and forging a future where the Middle East is defined by commerce, not chaos, where it exports technology, not terrorism, and where people of different nations, religions, and creeds are building cities together, not bombing each other out of existence. We don't want that. And it's crucial.
Yeah, actually, I want to pause right there for a moment, because I think that that's really important, what he said right there, because that issue right there about basically saying, look, these folks are good quality people. They're their own. And in his extended remarks, he's talking about, look, you have your own culture. You have your own histories. And he just went on this whole thing of saying, look at all these cities that you guys have done. And I've traveled through the Middle East before, even as a civilian. And I can tell you that a lot of the cities there, a lot of the technology is spectacular. And we don't often associate stuff of that high quality with the Middle East. We think of it as, Iraq and Syria and Yemen and all this stuff where all these wars are being fought. And that's kind of how we see the whole place. But that's not the whole place. And one of the big reasons why I've been so adamant throughout my whole career, whether I was in the military or defense priorities, or now here with this channel, that we need to end all of these wars, and we need to be genuine peacemakers. and bring the conflicts to an end, and not just expand them all, and definitely not just feed them so that they can continue being waged and you have all this destruction. Because when you have peace, when you have stability and people able to work together, they can produce some remarkable things. And not even merely what they can produce, but also because they live in peace. And when you have prosperity, you don't have any need to go after your opponents or to go after anyone else. Now, listen, this is not to be some pie in the sky thing that, yeah, all the Middle East can be transformed into this, wonderful, peaceful land that doesn't threaten anybody. There's always nefarious actors. There still are to this day. And even in some of these cities, there's problems. Not putting on rose-colored glasses here. But you also have to see things in their comprehensive whole. When you have the ability to have good economic prosperity that benefits lots of people, great things can happen, and it minimizes the bad things. I mean, both domestically within each of these countries, as well as internationally between them and with the United States as a region as well. Everyone can benefit from this. These are the kinds of things that you can get when you have peace. Because look, I mean, Iraq was a wreck of a place. Saddam Hussein, took his country to war for 8 years against Iran. And then, of course, the war started with Kuwait, and then all of that, the Desert Storm, that everything that started in this another full decade of conflict with us. And, we didn't want to resolve anything. We just wanted to keep the tensions going, and unless they would compel to us. And then, of course, Bush went in with the weapons of mass destruction. I don't need to go into there. And then this complete disaster, just absolute unmitigated disaster for the people of Iraq. And as we know, as I've talked many times, now then also, because if we took out that regime, we did the regime change there. Now then, they're much more friendly to Iran. So if you don't like Iran, then you shouldn't have liked the Iraq war either. But that's the point that I'm trying to make here. That's what it looks like when you have chaos and you have conflict. But in places like Saudi Arabia, places like Qatar, and places like the Emirates, you have remarkable cities and you have remarkable achievements. And Trump also mentioned in there that obviously oil has been the main driver for the Middle East, but now apparently Saudi Arabia is expanding into business areas and it's starting to get its income from many places besides oil. If there's peaceful coexistence, then there's reason for everyone to enjoy in that peace. Trump recognizes that, and he didn't give condescending or fake comments. He actually said, you guys are doing really good with what you're doing. So let me continue on now with hopefully I don't have Gary here, so I'm trying to run the contracts at the same time, but I think this is the right way to do it here. So let me go on and continue on, because then he says something else that actually gets me a little bit more excited in this next phase.
For the wider world to note, this great transformation has not come from Western interventionists or flying people in beautiful planes giving you lectures on how to live and how to govern your own affairs. No, the gleaming marvels of Riyadh and Abu Dhabi were not created by the so-called nation builders, neocons, or liberal nonprofits like those who spent trillions and trillions of dollars failing to develop Kabul, Baghdad, so many other cities. Instead, the birth of a modern Middle East has been brought by the people of the region themselves, the people that are right here, the people that have lived here all their lives, developing your own sovereign countries, pursuing your own unique visions and charting your own destinies in your own way. It's really incredible what you've done. In the end, the so-called nation builders wrecked far more nations than they built, and the interventionists were intervening in complex societies that they did not even understand themselves. They told you how to do it, but they had no idea how to do it themselves. Peace, prosperity, and progress ultimately came not from a radical rejection of your heritage, but rather from embracing your national traditions and embracing that same heritage that you love so dearly.
That is some good stuff right there. Listen, obviously, I really like a lot of that stuff that he's talking about there, because he's saying, listen, you guys did what you did. The things that are good in Saudi Arabia and Qatar and now in Kuwait and some of these other places are not because we went in and made them. They're not because we told them how to do anything. They figured it out on their own. And that's one of the things that I say, look, each nation should rise or fall on its own capacity. But when we start to think, and this goes all the way back to the Clinton administration, we are the indispensable nation. We know better than everybody else. And look, there has been almost complete wreckage where we've tried that. Helping people is one thing. Helping people that want help is one thing. But trying to impose something has been an unmitigated disaster for the United States and definitely for the countries where we've tried to do it. I mean, look at Somalia. It's still a disaster to this day, even though we've put God only knows how many billions of dollars into that and how many years we've spent trying to change their territory and to try to say we're going to go after terrorism over there, et cetera. It's still a backwater. So it hasn't gotten any better. Look at Libya. Obama went in there and led a coalition of people that deposed Gaddafi. To this day, they're still they have two separate governments that claim to represent the people. So they have an effective civil war there. Didn't get any better under Gaddafi than it was before. And obviously Iraq. I just told you there. So it's from 1991 on, that everything that we did, we didn't just fight the war and leave. We fought that war then to replace the Kuwaiti people, and certainly they were happy about that. But instead of leaving, we just stayed there, and then we went back again after a full decade of sanctions and all that. In the aftermath of 9/11, and the claim that there was weapons of mass destruction and all that. You certainly know all that. Don't need to go back through it, except to point out that you had both Bush and then Obama tried to claim that we're doing nation building, that we're going to make them better than they were. They're going to be this democracy in the Middle East. We promised a lot of the things that Saudi Arabia produced. We claimed that we could do all this, and that all of our efforts and the CPA and all of this administration that we did and all this, we were going to bring. We didn't do any of that. And Trump was right. He said one of the reasons we failed is for what he said. We think we know better, or we thought we knew better. We knew better than the people in Iraq how to make Iraq better, and it certainly didn't turn out that way. And now then they have recovered some, but now then what's left over is, of course, still more friendly to Iran than it was before. They were kind of a bulwark before. If you actually want to see Iran hemmed in, then taking out Saddam Hussein and taking over the government of that country was the worst thing that we could have done. Not to mention that hundreds of thousands of people were killed, millions driven from their homes. I went to see some of the refugee camps in the northwestern part of Iraq, where a lot of the people have been driven out when they were in Mosul, when some of the Christians were driven out by some of these Islamic groups, the ISIS, when they went into Mosul and some of the other areas where they were driven out of Syria. I've gone in and see them. I've seen what these places are like. And this is what happens when war. We went in there, and then there's the rise of this insurgency. That turned into Al-Qaeda in Iraq. Mossab al-Zarqawi, you may remember. We took him out. And then they went out, and what happened? Then they turned into ISIS. And then we went back again. Obama took us back again because we know better. We can't let them do it on their own. We have to do it for them. That was one of Obama's biggest mistakes of his entire administration. When ISIS rose there, he should not have done anything. He should have done everything to contain it, to make sure it didn't go anywhere, to make sure American interests were not harmed. But that was the problem of Baghdad, because they were the most egregious cause of why ISIS rose in the first place, because of their policies and of Bashar al-Assad in Syria. That's where those two things happen, because of their actions. They caused it. They needed to handle it. We don't need to interfere from the outside, but we did. And then what has happened since? I mean, Syria is still a mess today. Trump actually announced also in part of his remarks today that he's going to take some sanctions off and he's going to give them a shot. This new guy, it's a big mess because this guy used to be an Al-Qaeda leader. We'll see if he can change his stripes, but Trump's at least going to give them a shot. But we're not going to intervene. We're not going to tell them what to do. We're just going to take some of the constraints off and let the people see what happens. That's a huge mess, but it's largely caused by some of our actions, because Obama was also very instrumental in trying to overthrow Bashar al-Assad by putting all this money and all this other weapons and ammunition and everything else into these little groups, many of whom ended up fighting each other. Groups that the Pentagon funded, groups that the State Department funded, fought each other. Then they fought these people. And then it turned up to be what eventually did drive out Bashar al-Assad because of his bad policies. But the bottom line is we're trying to poke our fingers in and mix everything. And now then there's still Syria is a mess because you've got Turkey and the Syrian Democratic Forces, the Kurds in there. You've got this new group here trying to keep it together. I don't have a lot of hopes for that, but they got to figure this out. That's their issue. They have to figure out how to live together. They lived together for 1,000 years before we came. They'll have to be living there 1,000 years after we leave. It's their deal. They need to have it. And sometimes when you let people do it on their own and when you don't interfere from the outside, you get something like a Saudi Arabia or a Qatar or now a Kuwait or a UAE or many of the other regimes in the area. There's a lot of great things in there, and we can benefit from that. But it's not ours to do, whether to benefit or not to benefit. And all of this mentality that we've had, from the Clinton time when it was this indispensable nation, or from the Bush, the neocon crew that came out of that still runs this day to trying to run everything and to trying to say, no, we need to do more of that. We are the world's policemen. There are people who still outright say that. It's not a pejorative. It's a brag by some of these people. We are the indispensable nation. We are the world's policemen. We have to go and tell everybody what to do. We have to go into the Asia area. We have to tell China what to do. We have to tell the Russia and Ukraine what to do. We don't need to do any of that, folks. What we need to do is to not think that we know better than everybody else, and to not try to fix something and to think our money and our intelligence can fix stuff for somebody else somewhere else. We got enough issues that we got to worry about in our own country. I mean, you got issues with our border. You got issues within different economic groups within the country. Obviously, you got lots of economic issues that are roiling all over the place. You got all this stuff with the government, partially caused by the Doge stuff. It hadn't been fixed anything yet. It's been more broken than it has been fixed. But we'll save that for another day. But right now, Trump deserves credit for what he said, because that could be something really good that could get us out of this business where we keep poking our finger somewhere, almost always making it worse than it was before. If somebody has an issue somewhere, if there's something we can do to help, I'm all for proactive diplomacy, for trying to help others where it's useful, where they desire it, to where we have the resources to do it and we would benefit from that too. It helps our country, it helps others. Win-win is a great deal. I love that when it can work out. But those are probably not that frequent and not that big a scale, and only when it's requested and we have the requisite expertise to do it. So if we limit it to those kind of things, we can find ourselves in much, much better case than we are positioned than we've been before. One of the last things I want to talk about here before I let you go is on the issue about Iran. And so he did make some comments about Iran, which I want to talk about because I think that's also important. And I really hope he stays on the right side of this line. Here's what he said.
As I've shown repeatedly, I am willing to end past conflicts and forge new partnerships for a better and more stable world, even if our differences may be very profound, which obviously they are in the case of Iran. I have never believed in having permanent enemies. I am different than a lot of people think. I don't like permanent enemies, but sometimes you need enemies to do the job, and you have to do it right. Enemies get you motivated. In fact, some of the closest friends of the United States of America are nations we fought wars against in generations past. And now they're our friends and our allies. I want to make a deal with Iran. If I can make a deal with Iran, I'll be very happy if we're going to make your region and the world a safer place. But if Iran's leadership rejects this olive branch and continues to attack their neighbors, then we will have no choice but to inflict massive maximum pressure, drive Iranian oil exports to zero like I did before, and take all action required to stop the regime from ever having a nuclear weapon. Iran will never have a nuclear weapon.
Okay, so I don't love that one quite as much as I love the first one, but it is in a positive direction. He started off his comments by saying, I want to end wars. I don't want to begin them. I want to end them. There's reports out also, he didn't say in the speech, but there's other reports out that apparently behind the scenes they're trying to figure out a way to end the war in Gaza. Finally, instead of just continuing blind support for it. That watch our show from earlier today where we talk more about that. But anything that's going to end that war is great. His mentality, his idea is he wants to end the war. And the other positive thing that he said there is that he didn't repeat something that he had said a couple of months ago, which is if we don't get this, then bombs will be falling. That's what he said before. This time he said we'll use maximum pressure on oil and some other things. So he's in the non-kinetic areas. Now, I don't think that we should even be going down that path at all, because all we're going to be likely to do is end up pushing them in a direction to have this nuclear weapons program instead of preventing it to them. I think there's better ways to do that. But if Trump goes down this path to where, no, really, I'm willing to have a negotiated settlement because I don't want a conflict, then if the Iranian side is willing to have some negotiations and they're willing to give some things, and look, there's a big trust deficit here because Trump's the one himself that got out of the last agreement that they had in 2018. So I think the hurdle to get into a new one is going to be a little bit higher, but I hope that he does it. But whatever, it's always good to keep talking as opposed to start bombing, because then he's going to be back in the same boat that he was accusing these other people of making the disaster for. I think that he knows that. And unlike, say, Bush, who seemed just like hell-bent on getting into a war with Iraq, Trump doesn't seem hell-bent on getting into a war with Iran. If he did, he would probably already be in one, because he had every motivation and incentive from the Israeli side to do that, because they've been wanting to do this for a long, long time, of course. And many of them still do. But at least he has backed off of his harsher rhetoric and is genuinely, like Senator Steve Witkoff and some of these other folks, they're continuing to be in diplomacy. And as long as we're in a diplomatic deal, we're talking about it, Trump gets praised, because that's exactly what we should be doing. We just have to be clear-eyed that if you're going to have a negotiation that's going to end somewhere good, you have to give something to get something. And if we want that objective of no nuclear weapons programs, then, and especially if you want to say, and we want no nuclear reprocessing, you don't even want to have that capability, you're going to have to give something pretty big in order to get that huge ask. I hope they get it. I frankly do. I hope that Trump finds some way to have some big give to get that big get, because that would, I think it would lower the temperature a lot. Now, I don't know if Iran will go for it, but I'd like to see him at least give it a shot, because I know a lot of people a lot of people hate the Iranian regime. They have no small number of sins, but they are the government of Iran. And it's always better if we can get to a situation where, a bad regime is not made worse by the pressure that we bring, which is not going to change anything inside, but it just adds to the hardship on the people. There's no goodness in that. Anything that brings peace and lowers the chance for war is a win for us, because if you just end with this right there, especially on this topic, our national security capacity, our Navy, our Air Force, our Space Force, our Army, all the Marines, all that will keep us safe. Is even if things don't go in a good direction in Iran, it's not going to prevent us from having a secure future. The region, by the way, is more than capable of corralling Iran. It's not something that the U.S. has to do, that if we don't do it, nobody else will. They will, because they've existed. I don't know if you've checked your maps lately, for thousands of years in this area, in different versions, different nation states, and whatever. They keep coming and rising, whatever. But the different groups of people balance each other out. You don't need the United States to have to go in to be the policeman that we talked about a minute ago. The region can take care of itself. We should do what we can to prevent anything bad coming out of the region for us, keep our interest protected, which we absolutely can, whatever Iran does. And then we don't have to go to war. So we don't have to go to war with the Houthis. We don't have to be firing billions of dollars of missiles in a war that can't be won anyway, or go into war with Iran, which would be profoundly worse than everything else. I think Trump knows that, and I think he's going to stay out of it. So all in all, his comments today were really good. I hope that they're followed up with actions before, because if they are, he's going to deserve a lot of credit for what happens today. As always, we're going to continue to take President Trump at his word and at the actions that follow on all the different actions. And if tomorrow he does something that's bad in another direction, we'll call it out, because that's the truth. That's what we want you to do. You want you to know the truth of what's going on here. But where credit is due, credit is given. And then from what he said today, It's a really good start, and I hope the same thing happens in the Russia-Ukraine war. Hopefully he'll look at that and do whatever he can to get that deal off the table as well. But anyway, appreciate you guys coming out with us today. This has been, kind of an afternoon deal. We're originally planned. You can see that Gary's not here today because he was indisposed, but this is stuff that was breaking. We needed to go ahead and go with it. As always, we really appreciate you. Thanks, and we'll see you tomorrow on Daniel Davis Deep Dive.